Peace, peace. How we doing, family? How we doing? How we doing? Good to see everybody. Glad everyone could join in. We're gonna get started in a few minutes. Let a few more people jump in. I'm gonna adjust this a little bit. There we go. Hope everyone's good. Y'all let me know if the sound is good, if you can hear me clear. Let me know. I feel like everything is good. Peace, peace. What's going on? Yeah, man. We're getting ready. Nice different views here. You can hear me? Okay, cool. Miss Marquita, how you doing? Are you ready? Is DJ watching? Is DJ ready to go? DJ, when I see you, I got quiz questions for you. What's going on, Richard? Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Good to see you. How's the sound relative to the music? Can you hear me over the music? Should I turn it down a little bit when we get started? Hey, and Richard, I'm gonna tell you right off the bat, Ms. Tony, you're listening to, I more than likely put too many slides in this presentation. I overdid it once again. You know what I'm saying? What's going on, Sissy? How you doing? Columbia in the building. What up, Met? The Mets in the building. Tamara, what's going on? Tamara, I'm planning on visiting Columbia, so we got to talk about that. And I thought I put this on. Right. We're going to get started in about 1 minute. One more minute. And then we'll get flowing. We're good? Okay, perfect. Perfect. Yeah, we got to link up, man. Detroit's in the building. All right. So I was sharing earlier, because I'm going to go ahead and start now, because I feel like I have too many slides for this presentation. It's going to be a lot. So I really want, if there's any administrators, teachers, principals, parents, of course, to really dial in. I think it's going to be good, but it'll be a little bit more geared toward us adults and what we have to do to prepare our young people, because they need to have this information. Let me turn it down just a little bit as we start to get warm here. I hope everyone's good. Hope your week is going good. It's Tuesday. I'm hyped. I'm going to tell you now, I'm probably going to get even more amped and excited about this information. I love talking about our people, what we do, what we're about, what our foundation is. Especially when that information can destroy some of the racial stigmas, myths, attitudes that cause a society to be what it is. So I love doing this. I'm going to go ahead and jump in. Let's just start and build up to it. So Black History Month. It is February. What's today's date, Ms. Tony? It's February 15th. 15. What's going on, Malcolm? So it's February 15th. So we're right in the middle of Black History Month. Shout out to the students of Kent State University who first expanded Negro History Week, first started by Carter G. Woodson in 1926. He recognized we need our history, our accomplishments to be shared in some way, shape, or form. And so he started Negro History Week. The students of Kent State come along in 1970. What's up, Omani? They come in 1970. They expanded to Black History Month. And now here we are today. And it's our role to go from Black History Month to continue to progress to make this mandatory curriculum. And whether or not the school system picks it up, it should be mandatory for us. Mandatory for us that we have this understanding, this foundation. But shout out to the ancestor, Carter G. Woodson, and the students of Kent State and that work that they did. And we want to share this information, not just celebrating accomplishments of Black people from 1619 to today, but even before that, because that's that information you're not going to get in the school systems. So we know our history is more than a month, but we're going to use this month to spread as much information as we possibly can. Y'all with me on that? Hope so. So, Black History class, Golden Age, Life Before Slavery, Part 2. Life Before Slavery, Part 2. We're talking about the golden age of the African continent, Black folks. And last week, we kind of dived into 3 particular kingdoms, ancient Ghana, ancient Mali, and Sungay, and very impressive kingdoms, not perfect, but definitely impressive, and capture a lot of information. So we're going to continue that and do some work. And like I was saying before, when it comes to our history, very important. This is an important slide from Marcus Garvey. A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Like a tree without roots. You don't have your origin. You don't know your culture. You don't know your history. You're a tree without roots. And so every single young person, and even us adults who went through the school system and didn't get these 3 things, we're like trees without roots, unless we got it from some other outside source. And that can kind of explain some of the outcomes we're seeing in society today relative to our people. We're like trees without roots. So history provides a structure, a foundation that we need to function correctly as a people. So that's why it's so important. You have to have those 3 things. And I kind of put it on the screen there, and I'll kind of make it full screen so you can see the importance of history, why study it. We yip-yapped about this last week, about the importance of it. It's not some boring subject that you're studying in school. Like I said, it's to give you a structure, foundation. People can't properly know who they are without history. History is a key component to understanding who you are, what kind of people you come from, the kind of stock you come from, the lineage, where you've been, what type of people you are, how you're supposed to relate to other groups. And if you look at the way we relate to other groups today, it's not favorable for us. You're supposed to see what you're capable of, get an idea of the DNA and the blood that runs through you. That's what history is supposed to do. If you falsify that, if you omit this and don't include it, you can kind of condition the people to be weak. And I think y'all know where I'm going when I mention those kind of things. Take a look at this screen real quick. Take a look at this meme, whatever you want to call that. This quote from Kwame Nkrumah, very important quote. And I think it'll speak on some of the identity issues that some of our people are having. And it says, "I am not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me." And I think that's important because the United States has done an outstanding job, as chronicled by Dr. Marimba Ani, an outstanding job at convincing us that we are not African people, that our lineage isn't connected to the continent. I also think some of us deal with a sort of shame that comes with Africa. There's a stigma on it. When you're not fully understanding what your history is, you don't know the greatness by which you come from, and all you see is this distorted view of us being dominated, allegedly, by these other groups, you might not want to be associated with that. And so they kind of create this struggle to where you want to disassociate yourself from the African continent. It's almost like that phrase, African American. And if you've been miseducated, the thing you want to do is take off the African part. That's not good. So instead of being African American, you just want to be American. And if we start to study these cultures, there's nothing American about us relative to our cultural makeup. We are not the same people. And so there's when you don't have the proper understanding of who you are relative to history, dropping the African and just wanting to be American is a problem. Or, all that being said, you have an issue with kind of the surface cultural differences, such as, I wasn't born on the African continent. What do you mean I'm African? I don't speak an African language. I don't wear African clothes or eat African food. So what do you mean I'm African? And I hear what you're saying on a surface level. But when you start understanding it from a cultural level, from your soul, your DNA, your blood, the melanin on your skin, you know where you come from. You know where you come from. There's no confusion there. So we might speak a different language because of what happened in the past. We're now subject to a different culture. We might wear different clothes because we're subject to a different culture. We might name our children names that don't reflect our cultural heritage. Nevertheless, despite all that, our biology remains the same. We are African people. African people. Africa was born in me. So I just wanted to bring that up, because that tends to be a controversial topic with some of us. And they've done a pretty good job of getting us to disassociate some of us with the continent. And we know that's a prime example of divide and conquer right there. You no longer want to associate yourself with your lineage or another people. You think they're separate, they're different from you. They have a different struggle, a different set of things they have to deal with. They can't understand you. All of this are mindsets that help to keep us divided. So if you're struggling with that, I'm hoping you reconcile that tonight and put all that behind you. But that's a very important slide I wanted to go over. All right, back to the Yip Yap. We did some stuff on the importance of history last week. If you didn't get a chance to view that video, it's on the page, Marifo Kweli, League of Intelligence. Check that video out. We really broke down this screen, but I kind of want to look at the bottom half of this one where it says group impact. And we're talking about the importance of history, group impact, social system, economy, political, power relations, all those things right there. When you don't know who you are, you don't understand how you're supposed to relate to other people, you can pick a servitude position. You can take a servitude position. Let's look at the next screen real quick. Just trying to show you how history connects in relative to power relations. You don't properly understand who you are as a people, then the setup is going to get you. Look at the socialization. When you can distort, omit history in such a way as to socialize the people to where in a power over relationship status, you're of the secondary subservient position. And let me explain that. Power over relationships, that's a feature of Western culture. Western culture features power over relationships. That's how people come together. That's the kind of setup they have. If you compare that to the Afrocentric way of doing it, the Afrocentric way of relating to each other and form a community is to have harmony with relationships. So you have Afrocentric people who are harmony with, and then you have the Western way, which is power over. Harmony with, you'll see that even within yourself. And even with our people, you'll notice harmony with. We're talking about we want to be one with God, the creator. Whatever name you want to give for the creator of all, we want to be one with that. There's that oneness there, harmony with. When it comes to nature, we want to be one with nature. We want to hold up that which holds us up. That's nature. That's that Ubuntu type philosophy when it comes to nature. Even Ubuntu when it comes to people. I am because we are, and because we are, I am. That's that oneness relative to people. So oneness spiritually, oneness with nature, oneness with each other. That's the harmony with setup. That's our cultural foundation as African people. The Western way is different. The Western way, the root is power over. It's alpha. It's being the dominant. It's us going into conflict, and whoever wins, that person's in control. And usually control means that person has the authority, the privileges and the benefits, all the profits or money involved in this relationship. One person's calling the shots. That's how they want to set their relationships up. And even when it comes to groups, and when it comes to us relating with Europeans who created this particular cultural element, we tend to have the secondary subdued position while they're in the power position. Or as it says on here, servitude, paternalism. That's the kind of cultural setup they have. What helps to create that? A lack of history or a miseducation of who you really are based on your history. Look at the second line, omission, falsification, distortion of history. All those things play a role to help create the narrative I just talked about. Inferiority complexes come about when you don't have your proper history and understand who you are as a people. Self-hate, disconnect from your heritage. I'm not African. Saying things like that. There's an inflated Western history, inflated, distorted type of history that's passed down. And people get radicalized based off of that. Like Europeans were so radicalized by how they were conditioned, so radicalized by the racism and the myths that they put in their people, so radicalized to the point where they were enslaving people, like literally murdering people, feeding black babies to alligators and sleeping well at night like it's nothing. That's how far gone and radicalized people were. We've even seen, the Germans. We know what happened with that situation, literally putting people in ovens because of their religious disposition. That's how radicalized people were. This is dangerous work when it comes to racism. These attitudes, beliefs, myths have to be destroyed. Look at the physical outcomes that happen as a result of thinking these ideas are true. So an inflated Western history is dangerous. For us, it's the opposite. That their inflated history is our falsified, distorted history, and it destroys confidence, destroys ambition. We no longer have drive. We're not enthusiastic about life. We tend to check out and shut off and just survive. Look at the next line: no will to fight, powerlessness. Like all these things, I go over this to show the importance of history. It's not just some information we're going to take in to feel good about something. This is important. This gives us our structure, our foundation, and then it causes us to relate to other people differently. Shout out to Battle Rap, Easy to Block Captain. The talk is different when you get your history. When you get your history, you're going to relate different. So that's why we go over it. It's important. It's how we regain our power, the proper history. And I have this slide up, and I'm gonna breeze through because I know I have a lot of slides. But I put this slide up because it's featuring the whip, it's featuring the coffle, and it's featuring the chain. And I was trying to show you how they physically got our people to be subdued for a period of time. That's how they physically did it. We already beat this. This is important to understand. We already beat the whip. We beat the coffle. We beat the chains. We put so much pressure on the system, they can no longer hold black people in chains, coffles, or whipping with whips. They couldn't do it anymore. So they had to adjust. That's important to understand. Your ancestors already beat this. Now we have to beat what replaced these three things. So there's no longer a whip, coffle, or change. However, our school systems, because they omit history and falsify it and distort it, it's socializing us to take subservient positions in society to where we're on the lower pole when it comes to economics. And our political position is weak. We're depending on others. The school system helps to replace that. The media helps. It's psychological warfare now. That's the phase of the fight that we're in. Our ancestors beat this part. We got to beat the other part. Tony, you good? All right. So then again, economic impact. I won't spend a lot of time on this. I'll do the first line, spending power. And people can debate how much spending power black people have, but we definitely have money to spend. And we don't spend it with ourselves. So we have spending power, but no economic system. As a result of being miseducated, we don't see ourselves correctly, and therefore the trust isn't there. And if the trust isn't there, I'm not going to want to do business with you. Set up businesses, make trades. An economic system is social first. But if we're a people that don't like each other based on racial stigmas, we can't build that economic system. So what happens? 95%, you see the number there, 95% of our disposable income is spent outside of our neighborhoods, outside of our communities. Other people get that spending power. Other people. Sorry about that. Other people get that. So that's important. History helps bring that cohesion and oneness as a people. And from that, we can build those economic systems. So let's jump into it. Well, before I jump into that, I kind of gave you this visual. If you've been to any of our classes, you've seen this visual before. You've seen this before. This is kind of like a symbolic way to understand what I'm talking about. The type of relationships as a group that we build with other people because we don't quite understand our value and worth. And someone else has an overinflated value and worth, and we fall for that. So this is kind of captures a whole lot. And there's no one forcing them to do this. This is all by choice. This is willing. And in some cases, it'll even feel right. It just feels right for this group to be in charge and them to run things. And that just goes to our conditioning. If we understand ourselves as a people, we never stand for this. Just want to put this out here as a visual. As a visual. So history can be used to poison people, or it can be used as an antidote, a way to empower people. I'm hoping tonight's presentation helps you to empower yourself and then turn that power into tangible results. That's the whole point. Not just to feel good about some things black people did. That's cool and all. But let's take that information and do something with it. All right? All right. So we're going to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery using this information. Shout out to Marcus Garvey, the ancestor. Let's use this information to make moves. So we're going to jump back into it. We talked about the golden age last week. We highlighted ancient Ghana. We highlighted ancient Mali. We highlighted Sungay and those accomplishments and what they were able to build. What were Black people doing before slavery, before invasion, when we were free, proud, and productive people? What were we doing? We were in a golden age. Everywhere you went across the continent, you found Black people living in prosperity. I'm not saying it was perfect. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying overall, you saw Black people living well, building societies, sophisticated governments, economic systems, living the high life. That's what we were doing. That's why we were invaded. This is information that's not shared in our school system. So 50 AD to 1600 AD. And then if you remember this phrase or this statement that we read last week, and we're going to use this as a foundation. It says, when they arrived in the Gulf of Guinea and landed in West Africa, if we start doing DNA tests with Ancestry.com and some of the other places, more than likely they tell us we come from this region right here, West Africa. Same place we studied last week, a little north of that. This is the same, pretty much the same place. This is along the coast. When they arrived in the Gulf of Guinea and landed in West Africa, the captains were astonished to find streets well laid out. Why were they astonished? Because they've already been radicalized to believe that Black people were inferior. So what they saw didn't match the report they were given. So they're astonished to find streets well laid out, bordered on either side for several leagues by 2 rows of trees. For days they traveled through a country with magnificent fields inhabited by men clad or dressed in richly colored garments of their own weaving. Let's stop right there. They're talking about they arrived at the Gulf of Guinea. Let's go to the Gulf of Guinea right now. Let's just see. So look on the left side, right? From the country Guinea all the way over Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Cameroon, Congo to Angola, all of that is the Gulf of Guinea. So these Europeans landed in this region of Africa, and that's what they saw. Magnificence. Didn't it say that? Men and women finely dressed. That's what it says that they saw. So wherever your DNA is taking you on that West African coast, just know you come from excellence, no matter where you land at. No matter where you landed. This is the Gulf of Guinea. All right, so let's jump in. West Africa. West Africa. Let's start with the Yoruba people. The Yoruba kingdom. Some of your DNA says Yoruba. Yoruba kingdom. And these are highlights. We're going to highlight 3 of them since it was all of the Gulf of Guinea and all those countries. Let's highlight a few. So in Nigeria, we have the Yoruba, and this isn't an exact, detailed, accurate map. This is just to give an idea of what we're talking about. Just to give an idea, location, give us our bearings, right? Nigeria. So the Yoruba Empire occupied mostly in southern Nigeria from 600 AD to 1700 AD. That was the height of this particular kingdom. Compare that to the United States, which is about, Miss Tony, I think, 250 years old, I think. So look how long your ancestors in Yoruba, and we know the Yorubas are around still to this day, probably the largest ethnic group on the African continent, if I'm not mistaken. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But 600 to 1700 was the height. We're talking about before invasion and slavery and everything like that. And by 1100 AD, Ife becomes the capital and leading city. And look what Dr. Diop says about your ancestors in this region. It's impossible to describe here all the riches of the civilization of Ife. It's impossible. It's impossible. This is why I talk strong, because I know where we come from. It's impossible, right? And then those 2 Europeans are going to start us off with some of their quotes. Y'all let me know if you can see this. I wasn't sure. I tried to use the green on the black, but it looks kind of dark to me, but I'm going to read anyway. Modern ethnologists have found the art of the Yorubas so astonishingly high in quality that they did not ascribe it to a Negro race. Now, why wouldn't they describe it to a Negro race? They've been radicalized with that racism, thinking we're inferior and can't produce high quality things. But come to find out, we could. It's Dart Bomani, all good. We'll work past it. We'll work past it. That one line, we won't be on the screen long. The Yoruba Empire consisted of city-states similar to those of ancient Greece. He's saying ancient Greece because he doesn't have another reference point. They actually thought the Yoruba, that whole kingdom, was the lost city of Atlantis. They thought it was the lost city of Atlantis when they came across this particular kingdom. Ain't that something? Because they can't describe it to African folks. There's no way they did this. Some states had 150 to 250,000 people. Art objects of the highest quality were found in the ruins, glazed urns, etc., etc. Bronze implements, listen, gigantic granite figures. The Yoruba introduced the cultivation of yams, preparation of cheese. They were breeding horses. There's just a lot of high quality things were happening in Yoruba. In Yoruba, and I think I accidentally paused my own video here. There we go, so I can't see. There we go. And look at this next screen. It says the calm, repose, and realism of the Yoruba sculptures were reminiscent of classical Greece. It wasn't, but they don't have another reference point. They don't have another reference point. They literally thought people from Yoruba came somehow to Greece, looked at what they had going on, and then went back to Yoruba and built according to the Greece structure and pattern and culture. Wrong. The pantheon of Yoruba gods, their attributes, the vivid lives, the complex responsibilities echoed Mount Olympus. It didn't. It didn't. It replicated our own culture. The architecture, watch that next line. The architecture of the houses and palaces. Stop right there on that word palaces. Did anyone tell you we had palaces? Because no one told me. Teachers out here, history teachers. What's up? What up, Smokes? Good to see Warren out here. No one told me about palaces. Teachers on the live right now. Teachers on the live. Is your school teaching this to anybody? The architecture of the houses and palaces where rooms opened up, enclosed courtyards, open to the sky, etc., etc. Look at the next one. The Yoruba concept of the universe, their educational system, the organization of their society, and their statecraft supported a Greek connection. But it didn't. They just didn't know what else to compare it to. Surely these inferior people must have had some type of connection with Greece to build all of this. That's what they were thinking. And it's not true. Our own African genius produced all of this. Miss Tony, I'm about to get hyped. Next slide. By 1000 AD, Ife became a powerful city. They had the iron industry. They're manufacturing glass, textiles, talking about cloth and clothing. Look at the line by William Clark. In durability, their cloths far excelled the prints and homespuns of Manchester. We have better quality than people in England. Imported horses, salt, copper, brass, agriculture, and don't slide past that word agriculture. When we start talking about agriculture, we're talking about understanding the land, not just for food, but for medicine, shelter, and everything else. Everything starts with the land. And we were scientists of the land. Cities in the Yoruba Empire were walled and paved. There's a store right there, you'll see. The queen ordered the construction of pavement for all public and religious places in the city. She was walking one day and some mud got on her regalia. So she ordered them, said, listen, I want you to create pavement and put it all across the cities so that no one else gets muddy while they're walking. And so they have pavement, the Yoruba. And I don't have the slide for it because I didn't know how much time we would have. But let me just say this. The plant they used to create the pavement was called maize. Maize was only indigenous to what they call the New World, North America, South America, Caribbean, over in that region. So let me ask you a question. How did the Yoruba get maize to make the pavement? Maybe there's an American connection we'll talk about later down the road. I'm gonna move on. So that was highlights. I'm just giving highlights. Yoruba. Highlights. Next one. Anyone recognize this? Anyone recognize what these structures are? It's the same structure, two different pictures. Great Wall of China is the answer. Great Wall of China. Why am I showing you the Great Wall of China? And we're supposed to be talking about West Africa. We'll come back to that. So now we're going to talk about another kingdom. Great Benin. Some people say Benin. Susie from Ivory Coast says it's Beni or Beni. So it is kind of, and the power went out over here. So it's kind of depends on pronunciation. But our English accent probably wants us to say Benin, Benin, but I'm pretty sure that's not right. Pretty sure it's Benin. Anyone can correct me on that. But this is a part of Nigeria's culture also. Today's Nigeria. And so check out Benin. They have bronze industry, body armor, right? They have the iron industry, produced ivory goods, scented soaps. That's funny if we're supposed to be dirty people, but we over here making soaps. Agriculture again, metallurgical industry, high level craftsmanship, cities surrounded by walls and moats, 10,000 miles of cities. Talking about Great Benin, cities surrounded by walls and moats, 10,000 miles. Look at the next line. According to Garlic, the walls and ditches were on scale comparable with the Great Wall of China. Your structural engineering of your people. The Guinness Book of World Records, look at the next one. The Guinness Book of World Records in 1974, it said the largest earthworks in the world prior to the mechanical era were the linear earth boundaries of the Benin Empire. Your ancestors, larger than the Great Wall of China. Did they share that with you? Did they tell you that? Teachers on the live, administrators on the live, parents on the live, when you were in school, your young people are in school, is this information being passed on? Critical to how we're going to see ourselves, our identity, how we relate to others. Critical information to have. They had trade with other nations, including the Europeans. They had an economic system that including their own currency. And that was the same with the Europa also. They also had their own currency system. And look at this. Look at this next line by the Dutch scholar, Mr. Dapper. He says, talking about Benin, listen to this now, standard of living, watch this. It is divided into many magnificent palaces. Let's stop right there. Many magnificent palaces. They never told me this. Houses and apartments, beautiful long square galleries about as large as the Exchange in Amsterdam. Again, that's where he's from. It's the only reference he had. They're just as big as what we have back in Amsterdam, but one larger than the other, resting on wooden pillars, covered with cast copper, on which are engraved pictures of their war exploits, talking about your ancestors, battles, and they're kept very clean. Very clean, because we know the narrative about Black folks from a Western point of view is that we're dirty people. We come from mud huts, etc., etc. But all we've been reading about is the high level of sophistication and beauty our ancestors were living in prior to anyone invading them, prior to anyone messing with them. When they were free, proud, and productive people, this is what they built. This is where you come from. You don't come from the mud. This is what you come from. This right here. This is the standard for us. I'm gonna keep going. The town has 30 very straight, broad streets, every one of them 120 feet wide, which branch off into many streets. The houses are in good order, broad with long galleries inside. These are your people. These are your people. This is where you come from. What were Black people doing before slavery? What were we doing on that West African coast where they say we immediately came from relative to the African continent? What were we doing? We were living in magnificent palaces and houses, what we were doing. We were on point. Let me go back. Because remember, they'll say, we have that adage of we were kings and queens, and we were. But then some people would say, well, only a few people were kings and queens. How are the regular people living? How is the population living? We're seeing it. We're seeing it. All right, so back to that, our foundational phrase. When they arrived at the Gulf of Guinea and landed in West Africa, the captains were astonished. Why were they astonished? We just read why they were astonished. We get an idea of what they saw. Bordered on either side for several leagues, 2 trees, days they traveled through a country with magnificent fields. We're on point. Let me read that question by Bree. This is good. So how did we overturn our power to them? That's another presentation for another day. We'll get to that, though. We'll get to that. I'm going to keep reading. inhabited by men clad or dressed in richly colored garments of their own weaving. And it says, further south in the kingdom of Congo, a swarming crowd dressed in silk and velvet. South in the kingdom of Congo. Let's just go to the kingdom of Congo then, and let's see what was going on. Let's see what was going on. They were rich, they said. Well, let's see. What kind of setup did they have in the kingdom of the Congo? Now, it says right there in that first line, pick up in the 1400s. Here's why. A lot of information is fuzzy from that. We haven't got certified, solidified information on exactly what the Congo looked like prior to that. So we have to pick up on those European reports where they said there were rich men dressed in silk and velvet. So we pick up the story there. Obviously, based on the rest of the continent's history, we know we were on point. We just need more details. So historians are still working on that. So we pick up the story in the 1400s. It was divided into 6 provinces. You see the 6 provinces there, with governors over each. Governors over each. They try to say we weren't a sophisticated, politically savvy people. I say differently. We had a military base that could raise 400,000 soldiers. In today's time, 400,000 soldiers, that's a top 10 army in the world. And this is just the Congo. We're not talking about the other kingdoms we already went over. Just the Congo had 400,000 soldiers. And Basel was the capital city. They had provinces that were subject to the Mani Congo. Mani means king. So the Mani Congo. And they had satellite states like the Ndongo. And satellite states is where people like Queen Nzinga are from. And we'll talk about her later on down the line when we start talking about the beauty, power, and intelligence of Black women. She will be featured in that presentation. I hope you join us for that. Do a little more on the Congo. They had copper mining, an iron industry. Notice I keep stressing industry because these are things that undergirded the wealth, the knowledge of how to manufacture and turn resources into usable products. Very important. Textile and clothing manufacturing, agricultural science, you see it. Import, export, medical intelligence. They had a cure for lead poisoning among many other cures they had. They understood certain plants and their effect in the body. You put this plant in me, it'll have a certain type of effect. It can deal with certain conditions. Western technology, Western culture doesn't deal with that. They're involved in synthetics and chemicals. And we've seen the results of synthetics and chemicals used as medical solutions. All right, we're talking about the Congo. Civil engineering, skilled artists. They had the lost wax technique. We don't have time to get into that now, but the lost wax technique is the foundation for car manufacturing today. I said the lost wax technique is the foundation for car manufacturing today. We'll have to get into that one day and break down the science on that. But we're talking about the Congo kingdom, where they were dressed in silk and velvet. What part of your ancestry is from. Again, everywhere you went on that African continent, your people were on point. Your ancestors were on point. I'm going to keep going. When the Europeans got there, here's some more information. In 1485, the Portuguese sent 4 missionaries to the Congo. Here goes the captain. Next line. Experienced a well-organized political system with taxes and rates. Excuse me, talking about the Congo. Well-organized political system. There was a brilliant court and great civil service. That's pretty much the only line I wanted you to see on that particular slide. Well-organized political system, brilliant court, great civil service. Who? People of the Congo. When? Before slavery, when we were free, proud, and productive people. No invasion, no nothing. How do we set things up? How do we live? Let this information become part of your identity as a people. This is what we need. And then we'll finish it with this part with W.E.B. Du Bois in his statement. He says there could be no doubt that the level of culture among the masses of Negroes in West Africa in the 15th century was higher than that of Northern Europe by any standard of measurement. Homes, clothes, artistic creation and appreciation, political organization, and religious consistency. W.E. Du Bois, talk about your people on the West African coast. Excellent. So history can be used as poison. History can be used as an antidote to empower. All depends on how you use history. And this country, unfortunately, has a distorted, falsified version of history. A lot of things were kept out. Again, you're not going to see this information in our curriculum. There's a reason for that we won't get into tonight. There's reasons for this, strategic reasons for this. Right now, we're dealing with a history that poisons us, causes us to have a misunderstanding of who we really are, like a miseducated type of socialization. So we have to fix that. So everything that you saw, all the slides, all the information, again, those were highlights. All that information you can find in a book called When We Ruled by Robin Walker. When We Ruled by Robin Walker. Excellent book. I encourage you to get that book. If you want this book to get further information, I implore you to first go to Black bookstores, Black-owned bookstores first, before you go to Amazon. In Charlotte, you have Comedic Science Institute. There's a Black bookstore in Rock Hill. I think Black and Nobel in Philadelphia. I think there's a couple in Detroit, Atlanta. Try to shop at Black-owned bookstores first before you go to Amazon. There's also a study guide that comes with this. Not necessarily come with it, but you can get it in addition to. About $10 more, $12 more. I got the study guide, and it definitely helps me. Shout out to you, Leslie, for getting yours. Yeah, man. Excellent book, foundational books, about 800 pages long. It's loaded, but one of the best books you can get on our history, our culture, who we were prior to any invasion. It's thorough. He references everything. This one book will lead to many other books that you can get and use. So, right. And also, if you're looking for an online resource to send your children so they can learn, the youth, we have Baba Amin's the Umuru Academy, founded in 2010. Excellent online school that helps to mold our young people properly with their proper history, so they align themselves correctly. They're not going to go out here and form secondary, subservient relationships with other groups. They know who they are. They walk different, talk different. If you want to get in contact with them, look at the email to the left, babaamin@uhuruacademy.com, babaamin@uhuruacademy.com. Reach out to him, check him out. He's been doing it for a while now, 12 years, molded some great young people. Get your young people involved. If you can't do that, buy that book, create the lesson plans. DJ, Miss Marquita, if you're still watching, make DJ get some lessons in so he understands his history, so we can move. It'll be different for him. His experience and how he relates to life will be different when you know who you are and where you come from. You don't put up with certain things when you have that foundation. You'll be a tree with roots. A tree with roots. So, questions. I didn't take as long as I thought. This is good. I made good timing. Now, I would have put the camera on, but the power went off in the building. Y'all can't tell, but the power's off. Me and Miss Tony is in the dark, giving this knowledge. So we're hype over here, battling the elements. But any questions, comments that we have, we can start to go over a few of those for a few minutes and talk about that. Again, I would turn the camera on here. I'll let y'all see. Can y'all see me down there? Okay, here we go. Yeah, so the power's off in the background, but I'll do it like this. There we go. Yeah, so any questions, comments that you have? I think we had one question above. Let me scroll to it. I think it was, you were asking, how did we give over our power? There's several different ways that they engaged us to where we kind of fell for the okie doke. It's a lot to that. We'll get to that. I promise. I don't want to start it with only a few minutes left and then we have to shut it down. But I will say discernment is very key. It's a lesson that we need to learn. Being able to see the context and intent of someone's actions and their words. See the context and intent. If you can't properly identify someone's intent, what their motives are, you're gonna be misguided. You're gonna be misguided. I don't know why that phone keeps ringing like that, but I'm not seeing any questions though. Is everyone good? Everyone kind of understood what's the what? Miss Marquita, you good? Is DJ still good? DJ's probably like, man, let me go. Get our babies out of their schools. Yeah, that's a difficult, long process, but it needs to be done. Worst come to worst, start our Saturday schools built off of this information. Saturday schools has been around for a long time. That's something we should continue to do. Saturday school type setups to where we're giving out this information. That's important. That's important. That's important. Tamara, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Like I said, I did a lot better on the time. A lot better. I thought it was going to take a long time. I thought it was going to be long-winded. We are good to go. So if I don't see any more questions or any questions at all, I think we're good. We can sign out with no need to prolong anything. I appreciate everyone who came through. A lot of people are still here. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Again, When We Ruled by Robin Walker. Next week, we'll pick up the Golden Age Part 3. We've dealt with West Africa. So we'll talk about that eastern side, the other side of the African continent, what was going on there. We'll talk about the southern side, get more details there. After that, we'll march on. We'll talk about the Black presence in Asia. We'll talk about the Black presence in the Americas. We'll talk about culture, our culture versus Western culture. What's the difference? When you say you're Afrocentric, what do you mean? What do we mean by that? Let's deal with that. We'll talk about the beauty, power, and intelligence of Black women. We'll talk about that. How did we see Black women? How do we see women, period, in our culture? Because it's definitely different from how Western culture sees their women. Totally different. And we'll talk about another topic, how we regain our power, how we get back to where we need to be, restore ourselves back to our traditional greatness, that NIA principle, fundamental ways to do that, gain power again. So we'll talk about all those things over the next, I believe it's 7-8 more weeks to go. Something like that. Shout out to my mom. Appreciate my mom tuning in. Yeah, man. So any questions after this? If you're a viewer that's been watching and we're not live anymore, you're watching the replay, you can put questions in the comments. I'll come back and answer those questions with no problem. All right. So I'll see everyone back here next Tuesday at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock, we're going in. Right. Let me put that screen up. Next week, 7 o'clock. Bring a friend, bring the youth, and let's talk about it. Also quiz. Watch this broadcast and form a quiz for your young people. Let's test them and see where they're at. Give us information. All right. Y'all have a good one.